let's just dive right into the offense, if you don't mind, because I want to ask you a question here. Besides Bobby Witt Jr., would you take a single Royals position player over a single Orioles position player?
Well, it's related to what we were just talking about, which is I think you could make a case for Salvi over Adley right now. Now, defensively, it's actually interesting. One thing about the Royals that is just incredible, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, their control of the running game is ridiculous. They have allowed like 30 fewer stolen bases than the second fewest team that is allowed. So, and Salvi's part of that. Freddie Freeman's a part of that. But I think that Salvi, you could argue over Adley. Yeah.
I think their best pitcher being a lefty is a part of that.
Sure.
I think their second two best pitchers being veterans is also really important.
Totally. No, pitchers are a massive part of that. But it's such a huge gap that I noticed that. So that's something, not that Baltimore is necessarily a team that's going to, run all over you. So that might not really matter as much with them. But anyway, I think Salvi is one that you could make an argument for in this, especially considering the offensive season that Perez has had compared to the one that Adley has had. Other than that, no.
The Orioles offense is definitively better than the Royals offense, who have struggled mightily in the month of September. The only Kansas City Royal over a league average WRC plus in the month of September is Bobby Witt Jr. Everybody else has been below average. Many of those hitters have been very, very below average. And so I think you just have to take the Orioles lineup, particularly because the Orioles have their right-handed hitting mashers back. We talked about this earlier in the week, but it's a big deal. Ramon Urias, Jordan Westberg, Ryan Mountcastle, all of whom swing it from the right side, all of whom start and hit well against left-handed pitching. That will be a big deal in game one of this series because they will be seeing a wrong-hander in that first game, as the Royals will send Cole Reagans up to the mound to go toe-to-toe with Corbin Burnes, the Orioles' big trade chip from the winter. Game two is almost certainly going to be Zach Eflin, who the Orioles got at the trade deadline from the Rays, going up against Seth Lugo. Lugo has been confirmed by the Royals. The Royals have also already announced their game three starter, Michael Wacha. And he is probably going to go against Dean Kremer, who will throw game three for the very injured Orioles. Who has the better starting pitching, Jordan?
I think you got to lean Kansas City here. I think Reagans and Lugo have barely slowed down. That's the thing about this Royals offensive collapse, is that the pitchers have generally continued to do their job, which has made some of those close losses so frustrating because this pitching staff did not tail off. They were a team. There were a few teams in the first half of the season who were like, wow, they're pitching so much better. Boston, right? The Nats, and Kansas City, right? Kansas City was part of that too. And all those other teams just totally both regressed / collapsed, whereas Kansas City basically did not get any worse. They just kept on chucking, and so I gotta feel pretty good about them and have to give them the edge here.
I totally agree with you. I think it's pretty close in those first two games, like closer than you think. Eflin's been really good for the Orioles since the trade, and Burnes is Burnes. However, Dean Kremer in game three does not instill a whole lot of confidence. Remember, he threw game three for the Orioles last year in the DS and got blasted by the Rangers. So that gives you some pause. All right, bullpen. Ooh, okay. All right. So I think you got to lean Kansas City here, which is bizarre. The Orioles have the third worst bullpen ERA in September in the league. Okay. A lot of their reliable guys are not throwing well right now, particularly Yennier Cano, who's been very shaky and is definitely dealing with an arm injury. So what that means is the Orioles' most reliable relievers right now are a pair of left-handers. Gregory Soto, who they did get at the deadline. He's been really good, but boy, can he just walk the farm in an instant.
He was horrible when he first got traded, right? So
awful
he's as volatile as it gets. I love Greg Soto, but boy,
and then
it can get bad really fast.
Keegan Aiken, who has been masterful since returning from the injured list. So,
yeah.
And then Sir Anthony Dominguez is there, Danny Coulomb, CNL Perez, Jacob Webb. Again, this is a team who needed to do more for their bullpen at the deadline, and they did not do it. They released Craig Kimbrell last week, and it does not exactly give a whole lot of confidence. Meanwhile, on the Kansas City side, maybe my favorite reliever in baseball on this team, and that is Angel Serpa, the Zerp dog. Zerp diggity, the Zerp man. Lefty throwing upper 90s, and we just don't think about it because it's 2024.
Yeah, he's nasty. Obviously, the biggest name here is Lucas Erceg, just because of what they paid to acquire him at the deadline, and just making a big move for a reliever there. Let's also remember that they paid a sizable price for Hunter Harvey, who is just a non-factor due to injuries. Other relievers who they brought in to reinforce this bullpen: Will Smith, we mentioned, injured; Chris Stratton, injured; James MacArthur, who had been a big part of their bullpen, he has been injured and not really a factor. So really, we're talking about is Erceg, Zerp Dog, as you talk about him, Chris Bubich, who has been honestly pretty good, also as a lefty, as he's transitioned into a relief role. John Schreiber, who they acquired also before this season. So a lot of new names. Daniel Lynch, another lefty, has been kind of transitioning into a relief role as well. So Carlos Hernandez, he throws hard, but I'm not sure how much we're really trusting him. So yeah, it's an interesting group, and I think against another bullpen, we'd be like, yikes, but it's pretty close. This is kind of a coin flip for me because I still think that I'm still not feeling awesome about KC, but I agree. I lean slightly towards the Royals.